Welcome to the Gracewriters podcast, Christian writers changing popular culture. Connect with us at gracewriters.com. Today on the podcast, Adam Ryan, pastor and scriptwriter. I'm Belinda Pollard. I'm an author, editor and writing coach with a theology degree and 20 years in the publishing industry. Find links to my books, blogs and courses at belindapollard.com.
Hi, I'm Alison Young. I'm a romance writer and I live in Brisbane in Queensland, and you can find all my information under my pen name, alisonjoywriter.com.
Hi, I'm Donita Bundy. I'm a writer, preacher, blogger and a writing teacher. You can find out all about me at donitabundy.com.
Hi, today we're privileged to have Adam Ryan with us. Adam, along with his wife Joey, oversee the kids department as well as family and adults at Brisbane campus of City Point Church here in Brisbane in Australia. Every year the church presents Christmas Lights concert, and for the past 10 years Adam has been writing the scripts for the storyline that runs throughout the show. And during the COVID season, when the church went online, he also scripted the kids episode. So we thought it might be fun to have a catch up with him and find out the processes behind what he does in his writing.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with the Gracewriters and share what's going on in this bold and crazy head of mine. So it's good to be here.
So Adam, as wordsmiths, we all understand the importance of setting. So we were wondering if you would be happy to answer our rapid fire 5, the who, what, when, where and how of your story. So when you write, Adam, who is your target audience?
I try to hit a broad range of people. I incorporate elements that might capture different groups. For example, our Christmas script, I include the slapstick and the bright colours of the cast and characters to appeal to the younger kids. And my actual scripting, I kind of aim at an older generation. I try not to specifically aim towards the believers of the house or those visiting for the first time. I try to keep it broad enough that it captures them all.
Okay, thank you. What about, is script writing your main genre, or do you write other things as well?
I actually like dabbling in a bit of poetry. I do script writing. I've had heart to step into some writing a novel, but I suffer from a medical condition called procrastinitis. So I've procrastinationitis. So yeah, I've put that off for far too long. But one of these days I'll bite the bullet and step into that. But yeah, script writing. I've done a bit of stand up in my time as well. So that's kind of where that's kind of developed from as well.
A pretty broad range. We look forward to hearing the first steps of that novel writing in time. Do you have an optimum time for writing? Are you a morning, noon, night, or do you just gather time when it comes along? So when is your optimum time for writing?
I kind of sit down at 7 o'clock. I make myself a cup of tea. I sit there and then I stare at my laptop for about 6 hours and then it kicks in. I always try to set a time aside to do it, but it just never comes to me when I want it. But not a recommendation, but I find between 11, 2 a.m. it sort of kicks in, you know. I'd prefer it to be a bit more convenient for me, but I could stare at my screen blankly for hours and nothing's coming to me, and then it'll just start. Once it starts, I just try to keep going. Just try to keep the flow happening.
Yep. So whenever it happens, it's a good thing. Let it go. Yeah. Do you have a preferred place to write, like inside, outside a particular place, or do you write anywhere?
I'm pretty easy. I could sit on the couch or sit at the dinner table, or I just find a place where there's minimal distractions and just sort of get my head into the world that I'm writing from. A lot of the scripts I write are quite absurdist in style, so I've got to escape into a weird place for that writing to be fluent and whatnot. So.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So yeah, no distractions. I got to avoid that.
All right, thank you. The last one, how did you get into script writing?
I've got a childhood photo album at home, and I have a Creative B Merit Award from my grade 1 teacher for my creative writing. So it's, before I remember, I've just always sitting down with a pencil and paper and writing stories. I remember at about 9 years old, my mum was actually attending a creative writers group, and I had an issue with my bones as a young boy, and so I spent a bit of time out of school, and my mum would pack up my crutches and my backpack and take me to this creative writing group with her. So I'd sit around with a bunch of great men and women that were writing creatively and dig into the Arnott's Family of Sorteds and sort of write alongside them, So, yeah, as long as I remember, I've sort of had it around me in some form or another. But when I started serving in the church, I found an avenue where I could channel that gift and talent. So for as long as I've been attending church, I've had my hand in creatively writing either stand-up pieces for a congregation or scripting for particular seasonal events or activities.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly.
That's excellent. What a great story.
Sick.
Yeah. So you said you write seasonally. Obviously, the big thing at City Point Church is their Christmas production, and you've been doing that for a number of years now. And it's not just the City Point Brisbane location. It's actually, once you've done the script, once City Point Brisbane have done it, then it goes out to the other churches and they can perform it the following year. So just walk us through, what does the script writing process look like for you, and how does it all come together?
I kind of want to discover who my characters are first, who are my players, who are going to be treading the boards on the actual night. So believe it or not, I'll often sit down and sketch my characters. I'll design them. I like cartooning and sketching, and I used to write little comic books when I was in high school. So I'd sort of sketch out my characters, and that'd give me an idea of what are they wearing, why do they wear that, where have they come from, what are they facing, what's their personality, like what are they excited about, what puts them offside, and all this sort of stuff. So my characters, Alison will know, I've characters like Battleman and Skuldar and stuff. They've got a little bit of a history about them when they're on stage, but beyond the stage, in my own head, there's this whole other backstory to who these people are, and that helps me figure out how they'd react in certain situations, how they'd respond, the way they talk, the way they behave, their reactions to certain scenarios and situations, and that helps me sort of construct who they are, and that's where I start from. So once I know who they are, I'll get into the situation. I'll lay out my story arc, obviously. What's the journey I want these characters to go on, and what is it I want them to discover and share with the congregation, the audience, by the end of it. So, I want to have a point to start and a point to finish, and there's all sorts of wild things can happen between those 2 points. But as long as I get to those 2 points, that's my key.
Do you plan the whole thing, or are you a pantser? Do you write by the seat of your pants?
Yeah, a bit of seat of the pants action there, but I know where I want to get to, and I'm like, what could happen during this? Like, I like to create. I want to have a bit of an antagonist within it. I want a situation to arise. I want my key character of that moment or characters to face an obstacle to overcome or an issue they're facing. I want them to work their way through it, and then I want them to come to their resolve at the end. So what's going to happen between them facing that issue and the resolve? I had a fun time writing last year's where I introduced a character which at first appearance you'd think was the villain of the piece. But what I did, I kind of flipped it on the head and made last year's hero unintentionally become the villain, where he had an opportunity to forgive his estranged brother who the villain, but in this occasion, our hero from last year couldn't find the ability to forgive his brother, and so it sort of flipped the conventions on its head and made the good guy the villain of the piece, and the bad guy was kind of a lovable brute, wasn't he, Alison?
That was Adam, by the way. He was playing that.
Yeah,
I really like
he was adorable with
it. It's character driven. I like that it's character driven, that you build the character first, and then what they do, it emerges from who they are, because that is actually, when you do want to get round to writing that novel that you're procrastinating on, that is a really good way to start on a novel as well, especially if you're a pantser, which is someone who writes by the seat of the pants. Fantastic. I like that. Sorry, Alison, you had more questions.
Okay.
I think you'll find their conversations. There's got to be some traction to the way they interact and the conversations they have, and if the character development's too shallow, I think it could be like, why did he react like that? Why would he have said that? Like, oh, why did he react so strongly to that? But if you don't know who the characters are, you sort of don't know at what point you're going to get them to be triggered or respond to something. So.
The thing I like, Adam tends to have the same characters appearing for a couple of years in the production, so you get to go on a bit of a journey with them. And there's also, for those of us who have been around, there's also in-jokes, which come back too. So, yeah. And obviously, humour plays a huge part in what you write. Why is it so important for you to have those elements?
I think to me, I've always looked at humour as soil preparation. You know, I mean, our Christmas script, we do have a moral and we have a Christian message hidden amidst the absurdity. But I've always found that there's no easier way to bring down a wall or to open a heart or to make someone receptive than to have them laugh. You get them giggle, you get them have a tear come to their eye from laughing, or even something a bit more emotive on a sadder side. On Christmas, Easter, obviously, I don't rely so much on humour, but when it comes to Christmas, there's a bit of space to have a bit of fun. And if I can get them to laugh, I can get them to open up and receive that subliminal message I've interwoven amidst my script, or not so subliminal. Makes them a bit more open to receive that, I think. So
that's great. So when would you start? Like, what sort of lead time do you have for writing your script? When do you start?
Well, at the end of 2018, we'd just performed the first year with these characters. It was they were action figures. They were Barbie dolls. They were toys from a toy box, essentially. From the get-go, we made a gag that we've got to be careful with the storyline, as we might infringe on Disney copyright laws, and so we're very conscious of not. We were very careful of not straight ripping off Toy Story, so we try to make a very obvious distinction from the get-go. But the minute I finished writing that one, my head was already sort of planning on what the next year was going to look like. So I do a lot of in-head writing before I actually sit down and do my two-finger typing on the laptop to get the script written out. But so yeah, it could start very early on. From the moment I've finished the first one, I'm sort of thinking about the next year. I think the nature of what we do at City Point is I've got 4, maybe 5, 3 to 5 minute scenes to develop these characters that have been overdeveloped in my head. I'm like, there's so much more of these characters that are going to span beyond the 20 minutes I get on stage at Christmas. And so I think that's where my head naturally goes to the next year. I get to span these stories out over a couple of years. And like Alison said, I can bring back some in-jokes from the previous year. This year, I actually had a go at the audience. I said, if you don't get some of these in-jokes, that'll teach you for not coming to last year's show. So I sort of set that up
So, Adam, earlier you said you sometimes sit down and stare at the screen for hours before anything happens. What do you do to overcome writer's block?
I drink a lot of tea. Yeah, that kettle's just on constant boil. I go back for another cup. I go back for another cup. Sometimes it just takes that one joke that sort of makes me chuckle to myself, and I'm like, all right, we're off. That's a good starter point. For the last year's, I had the idea of having, because once the assumed antagonists had arrived on the scene, everyone was going to be like, oh, who is this? And I thought it would be a funny idea to actually, because he was a toy, have his packaging there, and it actually explains who he is. And so I sort of had that joke, and that sort of triggered me off, and it started. I just got to come up with that one thing, and then it just sort of chain reaction kicks in. So last year it was the packaging just sort of kicked in. I'm like, okay, cool, we'll run with that. So
Like
he came in and
of an idea.
yeah, you just got to get that one sometimes. Like, what's that initial interaction that triggers the
goes, yeah.
flow on?
Yeah. So you mentioned the kids online program that you've been doing during the pandemic. Yes. How did you go about developing the scripts for that, which is obviously a different type of a setting? And what sort of feedback have you had about it?
I think we're kind of existing in a society at the moment where everyone's asking questions, and they've got any number of avenues that they can draw their answers from, whether it's social media, celebrities, radio, TV, peers in the playground. There's so many, particularly with the kids, they're sort of facing these big questions about life, and I feel if we don't put an entertaining and engaging method to answer these questions for them, they're going to go to any one of these other sources to get the answers, and they're not always in line with the truth and the things that we think would lead them to a healthy and wholesome life. So what I started with the scripts with the kids is I wanted a key word. I've always said if the kids can just take away one key point, that's a win for me. Like, I don't want to bombard them with a complete breakdown of the Gospel of John or anything like that. I just want them to know that if they want help, they can call on God. So, all right, let's call this episode Help. And so from Help, I would go, all right, let's put myself and my offsider, Pastor Ruben, in a situation where he requires help. And so I'll think of a funny situation where he will get caught up with an issue that he's facing, and together we're going to work out how he can find some help with the situation he's facing. And then that will lead us towards I'd sort of do a creative reimagining of some familiar Bible stories, put in a few pop culture references in there and just make it a bit of a giggle, but have that core and that truth of that story still singing out there. And I got the opportunity to incorporate my cartoons in that as well. So I got to sketch out some of the Bible characters, which the color and the humor in those sort of things will capture a kid's attention, even if my monotonous drone of a voice doesn't capture them. Those pictures do. So it's a good opportunity to balance a couple of different giftings. And yeah, so
is it mostly animation, or it's live action and animation, or?
I got an amazing couple of guys that operate the editing suite for me. I just sort of sit in front of the camera and they do that. What I've provided for them is just a digital version of my cartoon, and they do some small animations to it, like they'll make them move or blink, or they'll make an animated fire rush through the scene. But for the most part, they're just static images. But the editing team, the video team, which is an amazing talent all to itself, they incorporate some animated elements to those stories.
Fantastic. And are people watching it? How's it going? Is it reaching out beyond who you would have expected to reach? Or
absolutely. With obviously coming out of COVID restrictions, where we can start to gather in person. Some of our resources had to be reallocated, and for a season we had to put our online episodes on hold. But since then, I'm getting emails from Massachusetts, in the US of A, Nashville. We've got a location over in Nashville, and they're hit pretty hard by COVID-19 over there, and there's a lot of kids that are begging us to bring it back. So I'm excited. We're actually working on a Christmas special for them, so we're going to put a Christmas kids episode on, and I'm hoping to get the episodes back on air as soon as we can. We had to realign our focus on live streaming the main church service here at City Point. So I think once they find their feet on the ground there, and they can reassess whether we can bring our kids episodes back. So I'd like to get them back soon. There's definitely kids that are missing it, and there's kids that don't get to go to church in person, and I'd love to still be able to get in there and plant some little seeds in their hearts as well. So
That's wonderful.
There's some adults that are missing it too, just saying.
I've had a number of adults come up and reference the episodes, and I'm looking at them. I'm like, you don't have kids. What are you doing watching these episodes? But we try to keep it fun enough that even an adult could sit down and enjoy an episode. So I like that broad incorporation of demographics when I write. So if I can make mum and dad laugh, they're more inclined to pop it on for the kids and sit down in the lounge room with them. So, and that's a win.
Yeah.
Adam, here at Gracewriters, our slogan is Christian writers changing popular culture. How does this challenge you?
Like I said earlier, I think there's so many people out there looking for answers, and if we can create what we create in a accessible manner, like if we get too high on our high horse and write in a way that's just going to disengage people that are in that place of asking questions. So if we can connect with that where they are without compromising our morality and our personal standards, then I think by all means we should do that. We're called to be a light to the world, which is something that's seen, something that's obvious, something that's accessible from whatever vantage point they're looking from. So if we can't put something out there that can capture their focus and attention, I think we're misusing our gift, to be honest.
Yeah.
We've been sent out there to capture them, to find those lost sheep and bring them back. So if we're putting something out there that just makes the sheep want to run even further, then we're sort of missing the mark a little bit, I think. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so obviously you're being part of City Point and having this great ministry, you're allowing, your faith is allowed to come out and demonstrated through the gifts that you've been given. Do you see yourself staying in the shell of what you're currently doing, or is there potential for you to take that further into other areas of ministry at City Point?
I definitely think there's avenues to go out there. When I do my stand-up, I do a bit of comedy at City Point, but it's normally just incorporated in other things I do. But I have had opportunity to perform at the Paddington sit-down comedy club a couple of times. So go up alongside some comedians, some secular comedians, and I got to stand out there and make them laugh without relying on dirty jokes. So it's quite the challenge. It's very easy to tell a dirty joke and get the crowd to giggle, but to go out there and present humour in a wholesome manner, and in those situations, it's more my interactions with those around me. I don't often interweave a ministry or an altar call into my stand-up pieces, but
but you could incorporate grace notes.
yeah, absolutely. I think I'm going to have to implement those as well. But I do a lot of my stand-up around obviously being married and being a father, so those sort of things go in there. And I guess my grace notes amidst that are how to interact in a positive way with my wife and my children, and just work that humour in there as well. So.
You could even work in humour about the fact that you go to church into your secular stand-up which is even just by itself is a grace note, because nobody else ever talks about that.
Yeah.
We are pretty funny. So,
Oh yeah.
There'd be plentiful material. So,
one of my favorite comedians at the moment is John Christ. I don't know if you've seen this guy, but he has a good laugh at us Christians fairly regularly. Not in a sinister way, but it does point out the absurdity of some of the things, the methodology that we adhere to and stuff. It's quite funny having a good laugh. If you can't laugh at yourself, it's a pretty sad place. So I'm always up to have a bit of a giggle at the silly things that we can do as Christians sometimes. So.
That's excellent. We're out of time. How about I pray for Adam and for the grace writers out there who are thinking of writing similar things? Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity today. We thank you for Adam joining us and sharing his writing adventures and the way that he has grown into this writing calling that you've given him over time. We pray that you will continue to bless his ministry and his work and inspire him and lead him into the types of writing that you are particularly preparing for him. And I pray for all the other grace writers out there who are thinking of doing similar things, from script writing to kids' talks to stand-up comedy. There are so many options and opportunities, and I pray that you will encourage and bless and inspire each one of them too, and strengthen them in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Adam Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. And
thanks for having me.
Donita Bundy and Alison Joy, I'm Belinda Pollard, and we will see you next time on the Gracewriters podcast. Thank you for joining us today at the Gracewriters podcast, Christian writers changing popular culture. Subscribe to the blog to receive an invitation to our monthly catch-up on Zoom and to our free private online forum where members discuss topics that affect Christian writers. Connect with us at gracewriters.com. We'd love to see you there.